Have you ever been tricked into believing something that wasn't true? Come on, be honest. Well, if you have, don't feel bad. You're in good company. In fact, you may have just been part of one of World War II's biggest hoaxes. And no, I'm not talking about the time your uncle told you he was going to take you fishing but instead brought you to the mall. I'm talking about the time Adolf Hitler was fooled by a ghost army. Wait, what? Yeah, it happened. And it was all because of a group of highly trained soldiers whose mission was to trick Hitler's military into wasting valuable resources on fake Allied forces. Their secret inflatable tanks. Yes, inflatable tanks. They also used sound machines, clever disguises, and enough smoke to make David Copperfield look like an amateur. And if you want to know how they did it and why Hitler fell for one of the biggest bluffs in history, then stick around. Viewer discretion is advised for this 10-minute or less YouTube video. It may contain some mild language, adult themes, and/or scary images. We, the makers of this video, in no way support or condone the actions of the subjects featured. Please do not try any of this at home. All right, let's get into it. The year is 1944 and Hitler is pissed. After 3 years of being on the defensive, Nazi Germany has finally launched a major offensive. The battle for control of the French port city of Marseille is in full swing, and the Nazis are having a hard time dislodging the entrenched Allied troops from their positions. But help is on the way. German reinforcements are just across the river. All they have to do is hold out long enough for them to get there and the Allies will be crushed. Except there's a problem. There aren't any German reinforcements. As far as the Allies know, the only Germans anywhere near Marseille are the ones currently trying to capture it. So how can the defenders keep up their fight without getting overwhelmed? Simple. They call in reinforcements. Not real reinforcements, fake reinforcements. Meet the Ghost Army, a top-secret unit tasked with infiltrating enemy lines and creating enough havoc to force the enemy to waste precious time and resources on imaginary foes. It sounds crazy, but the tactic actually worked better than anyone expected. The Ghost Army's most important tool was inflatable tanks, specifically the British Churchill tank, because each inflatable tank looked exactly like the real thing, except for the fact that it didn't have an engine, a machine gun, or really any way of defending itself, other than the occasional rock or Molotov cocktail thrown by curious locals. But looks can be deceiving, and the Ghost Army knew it. Operating out of a small town called Thury, the Allied soldiers would roll their fake tanks through the streets at night, stopping every so often to let some locals gawk at the supposedly invincible war machines. When the Germans noticed the fake tanks, they assumed the Allies had somehow managed to bring in reinforcements, so they called in artillery fire to destroy them. And while the soldiers inside the inflatable tanks were never in any danger, they did have to deal with the aftermath. You see, the men inside the fake tanks weren't allowed to pop out and say, "Boo, I'm made of rubber," after the cannons fired. Instead, they had to play it cool and radio back to headquarters, saying the attack destroyed the fake tanks. Once the coast was clear, the Ghost Army would set up camp and wait for the next barrage of incoming fire. It was risky, but it paid off because when the Germans tried to assault the position, they found it empty. All they encountered were dead trees and a few stray dogs. So they retreated back across the river, baffled by the phantom force that seemed to appear out of nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. And if you're thinking, well, come on, surely Hitler realized it was a bunch of Allied soldiers pretending to be tanks, you'd be right. But before we reveal what happened next, it's time for our first. Speaking of which, it was around this time that the U.S. military began developing its own inflatable decoy program. Officially named the Artificial Battlefield Project, it was basically the same idea as the Ghost Army, only more elaborate. Instead of a few rubber tanks and jeeps, the project involved dozens of lifelike mock-ups of everything from trucks and ambulances to artillery pieces and even entire buildings. The plan was to create such convincing fakes that the enemy wouldn't just think they were facing real Allied troops. They'd think they were facing a whole damn army. The problem was, the project was still in development when Germany surrendered. So the only people who ever got to see it in action were a few lucky members of the Ghost Army. But back in France, the Ghost Army was preparing to pull off its greatest stunt yet. Their mission, fool Hitler into thinking Allied troops were advancing on Paris. Their weapon, Operation Fortitude. The plan involved sending a large detachment of Ghost Army soldiers to an area just west of Paris, where they would spend weeks building up a fake military encampment. They even went so far as to dig fake trenches, lay down fake barbed wire, and create fake latrines. The goal was to convince German spies and reconnaissance aircraft that Allied forces were massing in the area for an imminent attack on the city. Of course, the operation involved a lot of moving parts, so we won't bore you with all the details. But here's the gist. Soldiers would march back and forth carrying supplies and equipment, and they even held mock meetings and ceremonies to make it look like there was an actual army there. The climax of the operation came when the Ghost Army soldiers pretended to cross the River Seine and establish a bridgehead. This was the moment they'd been planning for weeks, because once Hitler got wind of the supposed Allied advance, he'd have to divert troops from Marseille to defend Paris. And just like they hoped, the Germans fell for it. Hitler ordered the 17th SS Panzer Division to abandon its post in Marseille and head north to defend the capital. But as soon as the Panzer Division left Marseille, the Allied troops retook the city. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. While Operation Fortitude was taking place, another detachment of the Ghost Army was hard at work on their own little scheme. Deep in the heart of Nazi Germany, the U.S. military had set up shop in a small town called Ohrdruf. Their orders were simple: fool the Germans into thinking there were Allied troops in the area. The Ghost Army set to work building fake supply depots, barracks, and even a POW camp. They even went so far as to put on fake prison uniforms and pretend to be captured German soldiers. They even held fake hearings and trials, complete with mock executions. Now, you might be wondering, why would they do something so brutal? I mean, it's not like they could actually execute people. And you'd be right. But here's the thing, the Ghost Army wasn't just about fooling the enemy. It was also about boosting Allied morale. After all, what's more demoralizing than being stuck behind enemy lines with nothing but a handful of inflatable tanks and a dream? So anyway, the Ghost Army carried out their gruesome charade until one day when a German patrol stumbled upon their camp. Fortunately, the Ghost Army soldiers were able to escape, and the Germans found nothing but empty tents and a few stray rifles. But that didn't stop Hitler from panicking and diverting even more troops to the area. And that's when the Ghost Army's work was done. With Hitler's attention diverted from Marseille, the Allied troops were able to retake the city without much resistance. And that's the story of how a group of highly trained soldiers managed to fool Adolf Hitler, one of the most powerful men in the world. It just goes to show that sometimes the best defense is a good offense, even if that offense consists of nothing but inflatable tanks and a whole lot of smoke. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to search Idris Twin 10 for more content worth watching.